The Collegia Titanica and Questor Imperialis are some of the heaviest military assets available to the Adeptus Mechanicus or the Imperium of Man. These bipedal war machines bring huge amounts of firepower to bear upon their foes, but like almost everything in the Imperium, it is susceptible to corruption. Particularly around the time of the Horus Heresy, many elements of the Titan legions and knightly houses were tempted or turned to the banner of the ruinous powers. Such engines can become twisted like many servants of chaos, bringing the power of demonic entities to bear along with their already potent weaponry, their machine spirits becoming more and more spiteful and murderous. Unlike the Collegia or the Questor, there is no true name that ties them together under one banner, but they are generally known as the Traitor Titan Legions or Traitor Knight Houses. This is Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. The origins of the Traitor Titan Legions seemingly come from the beginnings of the Horus Heresy, as it is not believed or known that a group of Titans or Knights was ever corrupted by chaos before the fall of the Legiones Astartes. The fall came from the very top of the organisation, as the Titans and most of the Knights were answerable primarily to the Fabricator General of the Martian Mechanicum, as the loyal ones would be to the later Adeptus Mechanicus. Unfortunately for the Imperium, the Fabricator General at the time was an individual I'm sure many of you would recognise, Hal. Tempted from the Emperor's side by the promise of new technology and the guarantee of Martian independence, the Fabricator General threw his lot in with Horus Lupercal and the traitors before the heresy was revealed at Istvan III. Many anti-imperial elements of the Mechanicum would join Hal as well, including supposedly more than half of the Titan legions or knightly houses the galaxy over. And as the legions of Astartes went to war, so did the forces of Mars. The Schism of Mars was a massive civil war that erupted across the Red Planet, with the Titans on both sides wreaking untold carnage on one another and on their homeworld. At the same time, those forces further afield but also aligned to Hal were part of their own treacheries, joining the traitor legions in their battles in the heresy. For example, the Legio Ciutuavora, or Legio Infernus, they changed the name at some point, were part of the forces on Calth who turned on the Ultramarines with the Word Bearers, whilst Legio Furians, or Tiger Eyes, joined the Alpha Legion in the battles for Paramar 5. On the knightly houses side, House Maccabeus deployed with the Death Guard in the Coronid Deeps, and many others will have been around too, both for known and unknown engagements. Ultimately, this culminated at the Battle of Terra and the siege of the Imperial Palace, and though the presence of the Knights is unclear at this time, the Titans had a pivotal role to play in the early exchanges of the war. They formed much of the early vanguard and siege equipment of the traitor forces, attempting to batter down the palace walls to allow the Astartes to advance, though it took a combination of things to finally make it happen. Admittedly, as things got more cramped and the battle drew nearer to the centre of the defences, the Titans became less and less effective, but they still contributed to the continued, if slowed, traitor advance. The ultimate fate of the war was, of course, decided in space aboard the Vengeful Spirit, meaning the Titans basically had no role to play in the final fight on either side. But without the traitor Titans, the Siege of Terra may have never made any significant progress, and certainly not at any real speed. However, in the end, the traitors lost. Horus died, and Abaddon called the retreat, forcing the various Chaos forces to flee. Like most traitor legions, the traitor Titans and Knights mostly found their way to the Eye of Terror over time. Some may have held their own Forge Worlds or other holdings for a time, but the great scouring launched by the vengeful Imperium will likely have put paid to much of that. From there, just like the other forces loyal to the ruinous powers, Chaos had its way with those Titans. Like many piloted demon engines, the crews of the Titans or Knights, whether Princeps, pilot or menial worker on gun number 527, have become one with their engines, fusing with the various components with their souls probably lost to the twisted machine spirit or the chaos gods themselves. Sometimes the crew can become possessed instead of fusing with the machine, although the mortal frailty of humanity means this can only be a temporary solution. And like all demons, well, demons have taken possession of Titans too. Whether a single powerful demon controls the whole thing, or perhaps maybe just an individual weapon, probably varies depending on Titan class and the power of the demon in question. Assumedly, this possession form requires the intervention of sorcerers and or warsmiths as addressed when we covered demon engines long ago, at least if the Dark Mechanicum are forging a new Titan for one or all Chaos Gods. But, that said, I can see the appeal of voluntarily taking control of a massive doom weapon or hulking war machine if you're a demon bent on causing as much damage in the Imperium as you can. Over the millennia since their fall to Chaos, the Traitor Titans of Knights have of course been on the battlefield many a time. Often working with mighty Chaos Lords or of course the various Black Crusades, I would be interested to track the statistics to see whether the Adeptus Mechanicus, also known as the Loyalist Mechanicum, are truly favoured targets of these titanic murder demon bots. I mean, we all know they hate the Mechanicus, and the Mechanicus obviously hate him, that's clear. But keeping tabs on how often they fight as percentages, I don't know, it's just something that intrigues me. I like data, okay? Though there are, of course, chaos-corrupted variants of the known Imperial Titans and Knights, even if we don't have data on all of them, there are also some unique variants dedicated to the various gods, or perhaps to all of them. Interestingly, it seems as though Slaanesh has the most that we know of, though that may just be lack of data, especially when it comes to knights. There are 3 Slaanesh dedicated knights that we know of, all of which are, as befits the Dark Prince, lightning fast. The Hell Scourges seem to be the most interesting of them, as it is said they coordinate their flanking attacks using telepathy as opposed to technology, but the pack mentality seems to be universal and understandably lethal, even to the larger titans in some cases given the equipment of both the Hell Knights and the Hell Striders as well. I mean, come on Slaanesh, original naming conventions next time please, come on, you can come up with something better than that, surely. Slaanesh then has unique titans as well, though both seem to be on the Warhound sort of scale in terms of size. These are the Subjugator, a lightning-fast but lightly armoured scout titan with sonic and psychic weapons as well as claws for melee, and the slightly larger and tougher Questor that keeps much of the pace and firepower. On the other hand, when Khorne gets a unique titan or knight variant, he doesn't faff about with this hunting in packs or speedy little knight thingies. No. Nothing like that for Khorne. Instead, the Blood God has the Bane Lord Titan. This is a Khornate variant on the Gargantuan Warlord Titans, with supposedly semi-organic armour, and it embodies the way of war of the Blood God. Mass murder, ideally at close range. Whilst it packed an unholy amount of firepower like any Titan of its class does, including a mouth and tail weapon because of the Khornate influence making it look like a beast of war, the Banelord's primary weapon is, of course, a melee weapon. This is actually a unique weapon to the Banelord that I can tell, the Doom Fist, comprising a chain or power fist with melter cannons on top that makes the Banelord probably the best melee titan of all, since no others in its class or above seemingly pack weapons for that kind of range, and it's got a size advantage over everything else. And as if that wasn't enough, they are shielded by the Blood God from psychic attacks and actually seem to gain power by feeding on the bloodshed of the battle. As a result, if a Banelord starts going on a murder streak, you're even more dead than you were before it started. Kill it at range and kill it immediately, or don't kill it at all, seems to be the way things work. Interestingly though, I could not find records of Tzeentch or Nurgle specific titans or knights, though I do suspect that's down to lack of data or just the presence of other useful demon engines or equivalents in their arsenal, such as maybe, Silver Towers, they spring to mind. As for the mainline titans that are the equivalents to Imperial ones without fancy names, only the Reaver and Warhound have much substantive evidence, though we do know there are other classes. One of the most famous Heresy era titans, for example, was a Traitor Imperator, but we'll get to that. The Warhounds are apparently known by some as feral scout titans, though I can only assume this is due to their machine spirits and or the demons that possess them being much more animalistic and savage or cunning than Imperial ones. Working in packs and seeming to act as inspirational slash frenzying effigies for other chaos forces, even warlords or their equivalents would be wise to exercise caution when a bunch of warhounds are around. As for the Reavers, these things seem to actually be in decline as of late. It seems as though the Dark Mechanicum holds almost no world or technology capable of either creating the originals or even creating a bastardized knockoff using demons. Whilst there's a heck of a lot one could read into that information, namely that there may come a day where Chaos runs out of Titans, the fact remains that what Reavers are left are probably veterans more battle-hardened than almost any Chaos-serving mortal we know. Weaponry seems to be the same as for Imperial Reavers, no surprise really given how belligerent I suspect the corrupted machine spirits have become down the years, but that can still include having a vortex missile in their metaphorical back pocket, so don't get cocky. There also seems to be a variant of Reavers called Ravager class Titans, but unfortunately how much that differs, if at all, is unknown. I was really struggling to find data on it, so apologies. Unsurprisingly, there have been a lot of known Traitor Titan legions and knightly houses. I say unsurprising because, as mentioned prior, supposedly more than half of them turned traitor in the heresy, and there's been 11,000 years since. Probably the most infamous of them all, certainly on the Titan side, is the Legio Mortis, also known as the Death's Heads. Supposedly one of the first 3 Titan legions ever to be founded in the Age of Strife, Legio Mortis were assigned to the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet under Horus himself as a show of loyalty to the Imperium. Though many in the Imperium had initially accused them of loyalty to Kelbor Hal over the Emperor, their numerous wars alongside the War Master saw this loyalty shift to Horus instead, meaning that following him into betrayal was something of a no-brainer. They joined the post-virus bomb invasion of Istvan III, whilst the contingent that remained on Mars were the first traitor Titans to take the field in the schism incited by Kelbor Hal, only adding to their already growing infamy. This Legio would fight many times throughout the heresy, including at the Battle of Talon and in the wars in Paramar, but even before their arrival at the Imperial Palace, their corruption was visibly showing. Some claim that the Life Eater virus on Istvan was the catalyst, but by the time of the Siege of Terra, Nurgle had the Death's Heads firmly in his grip, and the Titans had massively mutated. The probable leader of the Legion, or at least the Horus-attached contingent at any rate, was the Imperator Titan Dies Irae, or Day of Wrath. There was a second Imperator, the Aquila Ignis, that fought and was destroyed in the Schism of Mars, but we don't know of any others, so I'm going to de facto say Dies Irae was in command. Dies Irae was actually planet-side when the bombardment of Istvan began, but the Princeps Turnet was implicitly aware and supportive of Horus's intentions regardless and acted to save his Titan accordingly during A, the virus bombing, and B, once it was over, he launched the attack on the Loyalists. Presumably Dies Irae then fought many more times in the heresy and eventually made it to Terra, and it's believed that it was the one to break the walls during the siege that either Angron or Khan, depending on who you ask, would be the first through. It became public enemy number 1 for the Mechanicus at that point, and though Mortis was seen less and less following its flight to the Eye of Terror, this vengeance would finally be fulfilled in the second siege of Hydrocaudatus launched by the Iron Warriors. Dies Irae survived a point-blank hit from an exploding reactor of a Warlord Titan during this battle, and would destroy a second Warlord and 4 Reavers in that battle alone. But the damage it sustained from the first explosion was severe enough for the second Warlord to take the Imperator down with it, consumed by their own destroyed reactors in an inescapable, deadly embrace. One of the other Heresy-era Traitor Titan legions to win infamy and renown was the Legio Audax, also known as the Ember Wolves, and part of the 13th Expeditionary Fleet, led by Angron and the World Eaters Legion. Audax was interesting in terms of composition. Their entire fighting strength that we know of was comprised of Scout-class Titans, i.e. Warhounds, at least 90 of them in fact. Part of me wonders actually if that's a reference to the 12th Legion being known as the Warhounds in the pre-Angron days. I don't know, might be a reference, might not. Interestingly, the Titans actually took some inspiration from and or shared equipment with the Astartes that accompanied them to war, namely the Ursus Claw technology that was employed by the Legion's flagship, the Conqueror. For those not in the know, Ursa's claws were essentially gigantic harpoon launchers that, assuming enough of them landed a hit, could drag a ship closer or bring a larger titan to its knees to be ganged up on and destroyed. Like Mortis with Horus, Audax eventually developed a fiercer loyalty to Angron than to any other. Something tells me that even if the Fabricator General and the leaders of the Mechanicum had not turned traitor, Audax would have gone wherever Angron went regardless. They saw action on Istvan and in some of the major battles of the Shadow Crusade in Ultramar, before somehow making their way to the War of the Webway by some unknown means, and presumably getting corrupted by Khorne along the way. However, Audax are no longer fighting today, having been wiped out on the world of Absalom due to both infighting and the exploding reactor or warmonger Titan that had been a former ally in the Great Crusade, now turned enemy. On the knightly side, we have House Ertegan, or however you pronounce it, though this wasn't always their name. I couldn't find the original, I just know it changed. They came from a world long since seemingly destroyed, and they seemed to be independent of the Imperium for a damn long time, until after the Ulanor Crusade, in fact. At that point, they finally came to the top of Horus's to-do list, and he led the Lunar Wolves / Sons of Horus in to the House's petty kingdom, personally destroying the knight of their commander on the world Altus Ferro. The knights joined the Imperium soon after and gained their unpronounceable name, but their reputation as merciless slavers and bloodthirsty killers was well lived up to, let's just say. They quickly became hated, dueling other knightly houses seemingly just for the hell of it, but the War Master never censured their deeds and seemed happy to just let them be. As a result, their alignment with Horus at the Heresy's outbreak was obvious, though it doesn't seem as though we know what they really got up to afterwards, which is disappointing. I feel like Khorne could have had some fun with them. However, not all traitor knights or Titan legions came from the Heresy, of course. One such example was the knightly house Drakon, which flipped to the side of Chaos around the time of 550 M37 in what is known as the Ecclusiad War, which also contained a traitor warlord Titan, though from which legio I cannot discern. The Imperium won this war, killing the instigating tech priest, but House Drakon survived and reappeared to attack the seemingly destroyed Forge world of Solemnium. They and their Dark Mechanicum allies faced off there with the Iron Hands and an incredibly skilled Freeblade Imperial Knight, who were able to destroy much of the house and, whilst perhaps not wiping them out, cripple much of the fighting strength of Drakon to the point that, as of this moment, they have never been seen since. And there you have it, a look into the various tales of the traitor Titan legions and knightly houses. Many of these twisted and corrupted god machines are ancient beyond almost all compare, having survived the Horus Heresy and the millennia of war that followed their defeat on Terra. Though some of them hail from younger roots, the combination of unholy death machine and demonic power make these forces a truly terrifying and nigh unstoppable force on the battlefield. Plus, it would probably do a real number on your sanity to hang around them for any length of time. However, they are not the only ancient foe to continue to assail the galaxy after losing a massive galaxy-spanning war. In fact, next time we shall look at perhaps one of the oldest non-deities left in the Milky Way. They may not hold the power they once did, but their former servants are still often scared about unleashing them, just in case. For now though, thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.